The year is 1160. The Iberian Peninsula, a tapestry woven with threads of faith, ambition, and unending conflict. Christian kingdoms in the north cling to their hard-won territories, while to the south, the Almoravid Caliphate casts a long, ominous shadow. A storm is brewing, threatening to engulf the fragile peace. In Leon, King Ferdinand II, a shrewd and battle-hardened ruler, understands the gravity of the situation. The Almoravids, fanatical and driven, seek to reclaim what they consider rightfully theirs. He knows that survival depends on strength, unity, and a new kind of warrior. In a small village nestled near the borderlands, Pedro Fernandez de Castro, a young and ambitious knight known as El Castellano, lives a life of relative obscurity. His days are filled with training, honing his skills and dreaming of valorous deeds. He feels a growing discontent, a yearning for something more than the endless skirmishes that define his existence. One day, a traveling monk, his face weathered and wise, speaks to Pedro of a new order, a brotherhood of knights dedicated to both God and combat. He speaks of Santiago, the patron saint of Spain, and of a cause greater than personal glory, the defense of Christendom. Back in Leon, King Ferdinand convenes his council. The discussion is heated, the air thick with worry. The traditional feudal levies are unreliable, prone to infighting and lacking the discipline needed to face the Almoravid threat. Ferdinand proposes a bold solution: the creation of a new military order, sanctioned by the Pope, combining the piety of monks with the ferocity of warriors. An order that will answer directly to the crown and fight with unwavering devotion. Inspired by the monk's words, Pedro travels to Leon, seeking an audience with the king. He offers his sword, his loyalty, and his very life to this nascent order, driven by a deep-seated desire to serve a cause greater than himself. King Ferdinand, impressed by Pedro's fervor and martial skills, recognizes in him the embodiment of what the Order of Santiago could become: a warrior of unwavering faith and unmatched skill. With the Pope's blessing secured, the Order of Santiago is formally established. Knights from across Leon and Castile flock to join its ranks, drawn by the promise of spiritual salvation and the opportunity to fight for Christendom. Araca López de Haro, a noblewoman of influence and keen political mind, sees the potential of the order. She becomes a staunch supporter, using her position to secure funding and influence, recognizing that the order's success is vital to the kingdom's survival. The Almoravid armies begin to stir. Raids and skirmishes escalate along the frontier. The drums of war echo across the land, a constant reminder of the impending storm. King Ferdinand, at the head of his army, alongside the newly formed Order of Santiago, prepares to meet the enemy. The fate of Leon, and perhaps all of Christian Spain, hangs in the balance. The call to arms has been answered. The Reconquista enters a new and bloody chapter. The year is 1164. King Ferdinand II of Leon, ever seeking to bolster his defenses against the Almoravid threat, recognized the need for a new kind of fighting force. He envisioned an order of knights, driven by faith and disciplined by monastic rule, dedicated to the protection of Christian pilgrims and the defense of the realm. This was the seed from which the Order of Santiago would sprout. In the monastery of Loyo, amidst solemn chants and flickering candlelight, the initial charter of the order was painstakingly drafted. It outlined the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, mirroring the monastic life, yet it also mandated military service, demanding unwavering loyalty and courage in the face of the enemy. This fusion of the spiritual and the martial was the order's defining characteristic. Word of this new order reached Rome. Pope Alexander III, recognizing its potential to strengthen Christendom in Iberia, granted his papal approval. This sanction legitimized the Order of Santiago, elevating it to a position of considerable influence and ensuring its protection under the Church. Pedro Fernández de Castro, a seasoned warrior known for his valor and piety, felt the call of Santiago resonate within him. He resolved to dedicate his life to the order, seeking not earthly glory but divine grace through service and sacrifice. His decision marked a turning point, transforming him from a simple knight into a soldier of God. In the presence of his brethren, Pedro solemnly swore the vows of the order. He pledged to defend the weak, protect the pilgrims of Santiago, and fight tirelessly against the enemies of the cross. With each word, he committed himself to a life of unwavering faith and selfless service, forever bound to the ideals of the order. Pedro began his rigorous training, honing his martial skills under the tutelage of seasoned warriors. He learned to wield the sword and lance with deadly precision, to ride into battle with unwavering courage, and to endure the hardships of campaign life with stoic resilience. The order demanded nothing less than perfection. Uclés, a formidable fortress strategically located on the frontier, became the early headquarters of the Order of Santiago. From its walls, the knights launched their campaigns, striking fear into the hearts of the Almoravids and protecting the vital trade routes that crisscrossed the region. It was here that the order truly began to forge its identity. The order actively sought new recruits, appealing to men of faith and courage from across the Iberian Peninsula. Knights, squires, and even commoners, drawn by the promise of spiritual reward and the opportunity to defend their homeland, flocked to Uclés to join the ranks of Santiago. Life within the order was a stark contrast of piety and brutality. Days were spent in prayer and rigorous training, punctuated by simple meals and communal living. The Knights of Santiago were brothers in arms, bound together by their shared faith and their unwavering commitment to the defense of Christendom. Araca López de Haro, a noblewoman of considerable influence, became a staunch supporter of the order. She recognized their strategic importance and used her position to secure royal patronage and valuable land grants for the Knights of Santiago, further solidifying their power and prestige. King Ferdinand, impressed by the order's rapid growth and unwavering dedication, increasingly relied upon them for the defense of his kingdom. He consulted with the Knights of Santiago on military matters, entrusting them with key strategic positions and granting them increasing authority over the frontier territories. The Order of Santiago was forged in the fires of faith and warfare. Its knights, bound by sacred vows and armed with unwavering courage, stood as a bulwark against the tide of Islamic expansion, forever etching their name into the history of Spain. The Reconquista had found its champions. The year is 1165. King Ferdinand II understood that the Order of Santiago needed to prove its worth on the battlefield. Rumors of Almoravid incursions along the southern frontier demanded a response. He decided to test the order's mettle in a controlled skirmish, a baptism by fire against a known raiding party. Pedro Fernández de Castro, ever eager for battle, led a company of 50 Santiago knights. Their mission: intercept the raiders and drive them back across the border. The knights, a mix of seasoned warriors and zealous novices, were eager to prove their dedication to Santiago and the defense of Leon. From a high vantage point, Pedro spotted the Almoravid raiding party. They were a band of 20 horsemen, laden with plunder and driving a small herd of stolen cattle. He signaled his men to prepare for an ambush. The Almoravids, confident in their escape, rode carelessly through a narrow gorge. They were experienced raiders, but they were about to face a new kind of foe, knights driven by religious fervor and skilled in the art of war. With a roar, Pedro Fernandez de Castro led the charge. The Santiago knights erupted from their hiding places, their lances lowered, their war cries echoing through the gorge. The ambush was swift and brutal. The Almoravids, caught completely by surprise, fought desperately. But the Knights of Santiago, fueled by their faith and training, pressed the attack relentlessly. The clash of steel, the screams of men, and the neighing of horses filled the air. Pedro, a whirlwind of steel, carved a path through the enemy ranks. His sword, blessed by the order's chaplain, seemed to find its mark with every swing. He was a force of nature, a warrior consumed by righteous fury. Not all the knights were seasoned warriors. Some were young novices, experiencing the horrors of war for the first time. Many fell, their dreams of glory extinguished in the dust and blood of the battlefield. Despite the brutality of the fighting, Pedro showed compassion for his fallen comrades. He tended to the wounded, offering them words of comfort and ensuring their safety. The Almoravids, demoralized and outmatched, broke and fled. The Santiago knights pursued them relentlessly, driving them back across the border. The skirmish was a resounding victory for the order. News of the victory spread quickly, reaching King Ferdinand II in Leon. He summoned Pedro to court, praising his bravery and leadership. The Order of Santiago had proven its worth, and its reputation was growing. Among those who witnessed Pedro's accolades was Araca Lopez de Haro, a noblewoman of influence and keen political acumen. She recognized the potential of the Order of Santiago and saw in Pedro Fernandez de Castro a man of unwavering resolve, a valuable asset in the turbulent world of Iberian politics. The royal palace of Leon buzzed with activity. King Ferdinand II, ever vigilant, navigated the treacherous currents of courtly life. Each whispered conversation, each carefully placed alliance, held the potential to either strengthen his reign or unravel it completely. Today, the matter at hand was the growing influence of the Order of Santiago. Araca Lopez de Haro, ever the astute political player, understood the importance of royal favor. She championed the Order of Santiago, recognizing their potential as a bulwark against the encroaching Almohad threat. Today, she pleaded their case before the king, skillfully highlighting their recent victories and unwavering loyalty. King Ferdinand listened carefully. He valued Araca's counsel, but he was also wary of the order's growing power. He knew that unchecked ambition could easily turn allies into enemies. He needed to balance the order's military capabilities with the potential for internal strife within his kingdom. Not all were pleased with the order's ascendancy. Jealous nobles, their influence waning in the face of the order's successes, plotted in the shadows. They saw the order as a threat to their own power and privileges, whispering accusations of greed and disloyalty. Within the Order of Santiago itself, fissures began to appear. Ambition and the lure of wealth tested the brothers' vows of poverty and obedience. Pedro Fernandez de Castro, ever vigilant, observed the growing tensions with a heavy heart. The disputes often centered on land. As the order acquired more territory, the division of spoils became a source of contention. Old grudges resurfaced, and new rivalries were forged in the crucible of ambition. Recognizing the danger, Urraca sought out Pedro Fernandez de Castro. She trusted his integrity and knew he shared her concerns about the order's growing internal conflicts. She hoped to enlist his help in restoring unity and purpose. Pedro listened gravely. He knew that the order's strength lay in its unity and devotion. He agreed to help Urraca, but he also knew that the task ahead would be fraught with peril. He would need to tread carefully, lest he be accused of siding with one faction against another. As the internal conflict simmered, King Ferdinand remained focused on the external threat. The Almoravids were regrouping, and rumors of a renewed offensive reached his ears. He knew that a divided kingdom was a vulnerable kingdom, and he resolved to address the growing tensions within the Order of Santiago before it was too late. Pedro, acting with Urraca's support and tacit approval from the king, began to confront those sowing discord. He used his influence and reputation to quell disputes and remind the brothers of their shared purpose, the defense of Christendom. Urraca, meanwhile, continued to navigate the treacherous currents of courtly intrigue. She subtly undermined the order's detractors, using her wit and charm to sway opinions in their favor. She understood that the battle for the order's survival was being fought not only on the battlefield, but also in the halls of power. King Ferdinand, witnessing the efforts of Pedro and Urraca, decided to intervene directly. He summoned the Knights of the Order of Santiago and delivered a stirring speech, reminding them of their sacred vows and the importance of unity in the face of the Almoravid threat. He warned them against the dangers of ambition and internal strife, and he reaffirmed his unwavering support for the order, as long as they remained true to their ideals. The winds of war shifted. The Almoravids, weakened, gave way to a new, more zealous power from North Africa, the Almohad Caliphate. Their armies, vast and disciplined, surged across the straits, renewing the offensive against the Christian kingdoms of Iberia with a ferocity unseen for decades. Key to the defense of Leon lay in the string of fortresses held by the Order of Santiago. Each castle, a bastion against the Almohad tide, needed to be reinforced and provisioned. Pedro Fernandez de Castro, El Castellano, understood the stakes better than most. He rode tirelessly, inspecting defenses and bolstering the morale of the garrisons. Within the royal palace, Urraca López de Haro used her influence to champion the order's cause. She pleaded with King Ferdinand II to allocate more resources, knowing that the fate of the kingdom rested on the shoulders of these warrior monks. Pedro, ever the strategist, proposed a daring raid. A small, elite force would slip behind enemy lines, disrupting supply lines and sowing chaos in the Almohad ranks. It was a gamble, but one he believed was necessary to buy time for the Christian armies to prepare. Under the cover of darkness, Pedro and his chosen knights infiltrated Almohad territory. They moved like shadows, their every step calculated, their purpose unwavering. The raid was a success. Supply wagons went up in flames, Almohad soldiers fell to Santiago's steel. Pedro and his men vanished as quickly as they appeared, leaving behind confusion and disarray. News of Pedro's daring exploit reached King Ferdinand, bolstering his spirits. But he knew this was only a temporary reprieve. The Almohad onslaught was relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. The war took its toll. The order's manpower dwindled, their resources strained. The infirmaries overflowed with wounded, and the dead were mourned in somber silence. Urraca worked tirelessly to secure supplies for the order, rallying support from nobles and commoners alike. She understood that without adequate provisions, even the bravest knights would falter. A desperate message arrived. A major Almohad force was massing to the south, preparing to lay siege to a key fortress held by the order. The time for skirmishes was over. The decisive battle was at hand. Pedro Fernandez de Castro braced himself for the coming storm. He knew the odds were against them, but he also knew that the fate of Christian Iberia rested on their shoulders. They would stand and fight for Santiago and for their faith. As the Almohad army approached, King Ferdinand II sought solace in prayer. The future of his kingdom and the order of Santiago hung in the balance. Only time would tell if their faith and courage would be enough to withstand the onslaught. The fortress of Salvatierra, a vital bastion against the Almohad advance, stood firm, but the noose was tightening. Weeks into the siege, supplies dwindled, and the morale of the Order of Santiago's garrison began to fray. Pedro Fernandez de Castro, El Castellano, knew the fate of Christendom in Iberia might well hang on their ability to hold. In Leon, King Ferdinand II wrestled with the desperate situation. Salvatierra was a linchpin in his defenses, and its fall would open a path for the Almohads to advance deep into his kingdom. But raising a relief army was proving difficult. Resources were stretched thin, and rivalries among the nobles hindered his efforts. "We are the shield of Santiago," Pedro's voice boomed across the courtyard, his words cutting through the despair. "They think to starve us out to break our spirit, but they do not know the steel of our faith. We will endure, we will fight, and we will hold this fortress until King Ferdinand arrives with his reinforcements." Araca Lopez de Haro, ever loyal to the order, worked tirelessly behind the scenes. She used her influence to secure additional supplies and pressure wavering nobles to commit their forces to the relief effort. The fate of Salvatierra, she knew, was inextricably linked to the future of the Order of Santiago and the Christian kingdoms of Iberia. The Almohad siege intensified. Day and night, their siege engines hurled massive stones against the fortress walls, slowly but surely crumbling the defenses. The defenders, weakened by hunger and disease, fought valiantly, but they were running out of options. Disease took its toll within the fortress walls. Dysentery and fever spread rapidly, claiming the lives of soldiers and civilians alike. Pedro, despite his own exhaustion, spent hours tending to the sick and wounded, offering words of comfort and encouragement. In the fortress chapel, the Knights of Santiago sought solace and strength. They prayed to their patron saint, beseeching him to grant them the courage to endure and the wisdom to find a way to break the siege. Their faith, tested to its limits, was all that remained. The situation grew dire. With food supplies exhausted, Pedro ordered the remaining livestock slaughtered and rations severely reduced. He knew that starvation was now a greater threat than the Almohad army outside the walls. Brother Mateo, a devout knight of Santiago, approached Pedro with a daring proposal. He had discovered a hidden tunnel leading outside the fortress walls, a forgotten escape route. Mateo proposed a small team sneak through the tunnel and set fire to the Almohad siege engines, disrupting their assault and buying the fortress valuable time. Under the cover of darkness, Brother Mateo and a handful of volunteers crept through the tunnel. The air was stifling, and the risk of discovery was immense, but they pressed on, driven by their unwavering faith and loyalty to the order. The raid was a success. The knights emerged from the tunnel and with a furious assault set fire to the Almohad siege engines. The enemy camp erupted in chaos, their carefully planned assault thrown into disarray. But the victory came at a heavy price. Brother Mateo fell, cut down by Almohad swords as he led the charge. The sacrifice of brother Matteo and his men had bought Salvatierra precious time. The Almohad assault was temporarily halted, and the defenders found a renewed sense of hope. But Pedro knew that the siege was far from over, and that more sacrifices would be needed before King Ferdinand could arrive. The defense of Iberia demanded a heavy price, and the Order of Santiago was prepared to pay it. King Ferdinand II knew the Almohad threat was far from quelled. Despite the valiant defense of Salvatierra, the Caliphate's armies regrouped, poised to strike again. He convened his war council, the fate of Leon hanging in the balance. Pedro Fernandez de Castro, El Castellano, presented his strategy. He argued for a concentrated defense at the strategic plains of Alarcos, a location that would nullify the Almohad's numerical advantage. Araca Lopez de Haro, ever astute, recognized the merit in Pedro's plan. The Alarcos plains offered a tactical advantage, and a victory there would bolster the Order of Santiago's standing considerably. The Order of Santiago, under Pedro's command, marched towards Alarcos. They were joined by troops from Leon and Castile, a united front against the Almohad onslaught. The Almohad army arrived, a seemingly endless tide of warriors. Their presence was a stark reminder of the immense power arrayed against the Christian kingdoms. The battle began with a thunderous charge. Pedro, at the head of the Order of Santiago, smashed into the Almohad lines, his tactical acumen becoming immediately evident. The Order's disciplined ranks and unwavering faith proved decisive. They exploited weaknesses in the Almohad formation, turning the tide of the battle. King Ferdinand II, witnessing the Order's success, committed his royal guard, further solidifying the Christian advantage. The Almohad army, their morale broken, began to rout. The plains of Alarcos became a scene of desperate retreat. Victory was decisive. The Almohad advance was halted, and the momentum of the Reconquista shifted in favor of the Christian kingdoms. King Ferdinand II, overjoyed by the victory, bestowed honors upon Pedro and the Order of Santiago, acknowledging their pivotal role in the battle. The victory at Alarcos cemented the Order of Santiago's reputation as a formidable military force. Araca knew their influence would only continue to grow, shaping the future of Leon and the Reconquista. The victory at Alarcos, though costly, brought tangible rewards. Lands previously held by the Almohads were now ripe for the taking. King Ferdinand II, ever pragmatic, considered the strategic distribution of these spoils, mindful of both rewarding loyalty and strengthening his kingdom's defenses. Pedro Fernandez de Castro El Castellano felt a growing unease. The Order of Santiago, once solely focused on defense, was rapidly becoming a landed power. He questioned whether the acquisition of wealth and estates would corrupt their original purpose, turning them into lords rather than servants of God. Araca Lopez de Haro understood the delicate balance required. The Order's growing influence was a double-edged sword. It strengthened the kingdom, but also created new rivalries and potential for instability. She sought to guide the allocation of resources, ensuring fairness and minimizing friction. The Royal Council became a battleground for influence. Different commanderies within the Order of Santiago, each with its own ambitions and powerful patrons, vied for the most lucrative estates and strategic strongholds. King Ferdinand II had to carefully weigh their competing claims. The conflict within Pedro deepened. He wrestled with the vows he had taken, the ideals of service and sacrifice that had drawn him to the Order. Could they truly remain true to their calling amidst such opulence? Araca sought Pedro's wisdom, recognizing his unwavering commitment to the order's original principles. She valued his perspective, knowing he was one of the few who could see beyond the lure of power and wealth. The financial burden of the order began to weigh heavily on the royal treasury. Maintaining the knights, fortifying their castles, and administering their estates required a constant flow of resources, straining the kingdom's coffers. Pedro, determined to uphold the order's commitment to service, focused on the welfare of the people under their protection. He ensured fair treatment and worked to improve their lives, proving that power could be wielded for good. Araca, a master of diplomacy, worked tirelessly to maintain peace among the competing factions within the order. Her influence and political acumen were crucial in preventing internal strife from undermining their strength. King Ferdinand II, recognizing the potential for corruption, issued a series of decrees designed to limit the order's power and ensure accountability. He sought to strike a balance between granting them the resources they needed to defend the realm and preventing them from becoming a law unto themselves. Pedro focused on shaping the next generation of knights, imbuing them with the spirit of Santiago. He emphasized the importance of discipline, courage, and above all, a commitment to serving God and protecting the innocent. As the sun set over the Iberian Peninsula, Araca reflected on the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. The Order of Santiago had become a powerful force, but its future remained uncertain, dependent on its ability to remain true to its ideals amidst the temptations of power and wealth. The Reconquista was far from over, and the Order's fate was inextricably linked to the destiny of Christian Spain. The echoes of Alarcos still rang in Pedro's ears, not as a triumph, but as a haunting reminder of the brutal cost of war. The faces of fallen comrades, both Christian and Muslim, blurred in his memory, fueling a growing unease within his soul. Word of discontent within the order reached King Ferdinand. A delegation of friars, concerned about the growing emphasis on military matters over spiritual duties, sought an audience, pleading for reform and a return to the order's founding principles. Pedro traveled to Santiago de Compostela, seeking solace and guidance. Before the grand altar, he wrestled with his conscience, questioning whether his martial prowess truly served God's purpose or merely fueled endless bloodshed. Araca, ever attuned to the shifting political currents, penned a letter to the Grand Master of the Order. She urged him to address the growing concerns, reminding him of the importance of maintaining the Order's spiritual integrity alongside its military strength. Within the Order's commandery, a heated debate erupted. Some knights argued for unwavering military focus, seeing it as the only path to protecting Christendom. Others, swayed by the friars' pleas, called for a renewed emphasis on piety and charitable works. Pedro sought refuge in the simple act of tending to a small garden. The quiet labor grounded him, offering a respite from the turmoil within and a connection to the tangible fruits of creation. Summoning the Grand Master to his court, King Ferdinand voiced his concerns directly. He stressed the need for unity within the order and a balanced approach that honored both its military and spiritual obligations. Araca convened a meeting with influential members of the order, advocating for practical solutions to the internal discord. She proposed reforms that would ensure both spiritual growth and continued military readiness. The Grand Master, heeding the king's counsel and Araca's insights, addressed the assembled knights. He acknowledged the validity of the concerns raised and pledged to implement reforms that would strengthen both their faith and their fighting prowess. Pedro, finding renewed purpose, dedicated himself to training the next generation of knights. He instilled in them not only martial skills, but also the importance of humility, compassion, and unwavering faith. The Order of Santiago slowly began to heal. Knights spent their days in prayer, charitable works, and rigorous training, striving to embody the ideals of both warrior and monk. A new equilibrium was being forged. King Ferdinand watched with satisfaction as the Order of Santiago emerged from its internal struggles stronger and more unified. He knew that in the turbulent years to come, their unwavering faith and martial excellence would be essential to the defense of Iberia. The year is 1180. Decade after decade of war had reshaped the Iberian landscape. The Order of Santiago, born of necessity, had become a cornerstone of the Christian kingdom's defenses. With each victory against the Almohads, their influence expanded, solidifying their position in Iberian society. Pedro Fernández de Castro, now a seasoned commander, oversaw the construction and defense of newly acquired fortresses. He instilled in his men the same unwavering faith and martial discipline that had defined the order from its inception. He trained new recruits tirelessly, ensuring the order's continued strength. Araca López de Haro, ever the order's staunch advocate, navigated the treacherous currents of courtly politics. She used her influence to secure much-needed resources and support for the order, ensuring they were well-equipped to face future challenges. Skirmishes with the Almohads continued along the frontier. Pedro, ever at the forefront, led daring raids and defensive campaigns, pushing back the enemy and securing vital territories. Each victory added to the order's prestige and cemented their reputation as formidable warriors. King Ferdinand II, recognizing Pedro's invaluable contributions, bestowed upon him new titles and lands. El Castellano became a symbol of the order's unwavering commitment to the defense of Leon and Castile. Despite his growing influence, Pedro remained true to the order's founding principles. He never forgot the importance of faith and humility, seeking solace and guidance in prayer. He understood that true strength came not only from the sword but also from unwavering belief. Araca, too, understood the importance of maintaining the order's spiritual core. She actively supported the construction of new churches and monasteries, ensuring that the order's growing wealth did not overshadow its religious purpose. The order's influence extended beyond the battlefield. They became arbitrators and administrators, resolving disputes and dispensing justice in the territories under their control. They were increasingly involved in the daily lives of the people they protected. Pedro dedicated much of his time to mentoring young squires, passing on his knowledge and experience to the next generation of knights. He instilled in them the importance of courage, discipline, and unwavering faith in Santiago. As the years passed, the order's legacy grew, becoming intertwined with the very fabric of Spanish identity. Stories of their bravery and devotion were passed down through generations, inspiring countless others to take up the cause of the Reconquista. The Reconquista continued, fueled by the faith and determination of men like Pedro Fernández de Castro and the unwavering support of figures like Araca López de Haro. The Order of Santiago remained a vital force, pushing back the boundaries of Islamic control and securing a future for Christian Spain. The legacy of Santiago endured, a symbol of faith, courage, and the enduring spirit of Spain. The order, forever bound to his name, stood as a testament to the power of belief and the unwavering defense of the Iberian Peninsula.